both. How does that work? Can you be seated for both?
Yes.
I think we have a quorum for both commissions, so
Yeah,
he's welcome.
with us.
Your home was a full member.
As long as we have a quorum for both, right? So Bill, do you want to walk us through the minutes?
Sure. So Planning Commission minutes of the September 13th, 2022 meeting. Hopefully commissioners had an opportunity to review them. Any comments on page 1, which would be lines 1 through 44? Page 2, lines 45 through 90. Page 3 is pretty much Amanda's tagline, so everything was good there. So I make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
I second that. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved unanimously. Can I go back, since Joe Campolito is a member of both commissions, I'd like to suggest that if he's a member of conservation, that way we can see our second alternate, Marcus first.
Sure, you have that for the minutes?
Yes. So you'll be seated as a full member tonight.
Perfect.
All right. So Savannah, do you want to kind of?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I say, I'm really excited that we've come together for this joint meeting. Marjorie and I talked about it at the, what was the? Open space. Open space, thank you. It's the open space meeting. And as we're looking at updating our POCD, even though we're before the 10-year period, there was just some things that we felt we had to address, before the next cycle, which was 4 years away. So I'm really glad that we could all be meeting and looking at how you can help us address some of the things in the
I just
POCD.
want to add, I think this is the first time we've met as a joint commission. I know I've known since 2000. So. Which I read that.
Yeah. So
this is a red letter day.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we were able to do this. So.
Thank you, Madam Chairs and Commissioners. We, as your land use staff, were very jazzed when you brought up this idea. And so to kind of give us some introductory information, we wanted to provide an overview of each of your purviews. And so we're going to go through that just so you can get a feel of what the other commission who's here is in charge of by their statutory and regulatory requirements. Then we wanted to provide an opportunity for commission updates. So we'll ask both chairs. We have some prompting questions just so you can kind of get an idea of what you've been working on over the last year. What is something that you're particularly proud of? What has been a challenge? Just kind of getting an idea of the things that you've been facing. We'll then go into discussion of the related plan of conservation and development goals. So relating to what Chairman Levitt-Smith said, as the Planning Commission is preparing to update their plan of conservation and development, it's the entire communities, but they're the guiding commission on this. We wanted to call out the activities that the Conservation Commission and the Planning Commission were identified in the 2017 document to collaborate on. So you'll notice that what's in here is a little bit narrow, but we just wanted to see what you already have been given as a task to work on together. We're going to ask for some help in prioritizing and then what you think is missing. And then we'll get into next steps about where we hope as your staff to take the information we get today. So at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, but we'll start with the purviews. And I will say, I'm not going to go through, you have a lot more paper than you usually have. Usually we give it to you on your iPad, but we thought that the presentation had a lot of great information. So we wanted to give it to you so you had a copy to keep as a resource. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen the Clear Land Use Academy one-pagers on each of your commissions. They're really fabulous. They have them for all land use commissions. We printed them out for the commissions we have today, but it kind of just gives you an in-depth rundown about what the requirements of each commission are, where to find it in the statute, and I think they're great. So we provided them. We're not going to go over them in depth. That's what the PowerPoint's for, but you'll have them for a resource for you to keep moving forward. So in terms of the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission was established by the Connecticut General Statutes Chapter 126, Section 8-19, and it allows municipalities to establish planning commissions. They're not required, but they can be created by an ordinance, and that is what the town of Simsbury did. So in the town of Simsbury, the planning commission was an elected commission, and so members that are on the planning commission that are here today have been elected to the roles that they serve in. And so the roles and responsibilities of the planning commission, and this isn't all encompassing, but we just kind of wanted to give you a little flavor of what they have. So the planning commission's responsibilities are to prepare, adopt, and amend a plan of conservation and development, which is part of what we're here to discuss today. They review municipal improvements, and there's a long run-on sentence about all the ways in which that they have to do so in that commission, or in that power. They establish subdivision regulations, review subdivision applications, and advise the zoning commission on zone changes or text amendments, which is something they have to do tonight. So if you're so inclined to stay and watch that process, you'll get to see them in action in that role. So I'll start with the Conservation Commission, and then I'll move to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. I think one thing that we saw as staff through going through this process is the Conservation Commission has a lot of purview that we might I wasn't aware of until I looked at this. So I thought it was a wonderful resource. So just kind of the background, nuts and bolts side of things, Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 97, Section 7-131A, allows a municipality to establish a conservation commission. So not required again, but more than welcome to do so. And the town of Simsbury established the Conservation Commission and Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency as one entity. And so the roles and responsibilities of just the Conservation Commission, so just putting on that hat, they're required to conduct research into the utilization and possible utilization of land areas in the municipality, index all open areas. I think that's also part of the conversation that brought this to a head to come together, and then to make an annual report to the municipality. Things they can include, and I didn't put them all because this text would have gotten much smaller and it's already small as it is make recommendations to other municipal agencies on land use changes, which I think is a role that it sounds like the Conservation Commission wants to play a larger part in, recommend programs for development and use of all open areas, propose a greenway plan for inclusion in the plan of conservation and development, formulate watershed management plans or drought management plans, and much more. So if you are interested, I really do recommend that clear document. It's the majority of the conservation one. They have a lot of purview under their commission.
Sabina, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So when it says index all open spaces,
Yes.
does that include the spaces identified in the PA 490?
So it's broad. I think that it can include that, but isn't required to. And I think that that's a natural place for the commissions to work together.
Yeah.
So you're bringing up a good touch point.
And another question, I
Sure.
know when I spoke with George a week or so ago, and one of the things in the POCD that we want to do is we're going to put it on as a monthly or quarterly agenda item, is to kind of hold our feet to the fire to make sure we're following through on things. And so when it says propose a greenway plan and things like that, if we were to put that in the POCD, then that would be one of our, okay, so then we could say, hey, Marjorie, where are you on this? And that would be one way to keep that line of communication.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
perfect.
And so I have a document, again, one fabulous. I'm going to ask you guys to fill out later. If those are things you're interested in, please add those, because we're going to share this with Glenn, and that's going to help him work on the implementation matrices and additional strategies. So if this sparks your memory or ideas of things you want, we're going to get here.
Okay.
Please add them.
Awesome.
So the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency roles and responsibilities. This is out of the commissions here today, the only commission that's required to be created by statute. So statute says every single municipality shall have an Inland Wetlands Commission. And that's Chapter 22A, 42C. And so the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency is an appointed board. And as I said earlier, it's that joint Conservation Commission, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. So the roles and responsibilities when the commission's wearing the wetlands hat are to establish, change, or repeal regulations or boundaries, decide upon petitions to change regulations and boundaries, decide upon applications for regulated activities, and enforce regulations and conditions of permits. So this is more of the administrative permit review, but it is all about ensuring that the wetlands and watercourses are protected. And the conservation hat is really more of the policy guiding arm of the agency. So with that being said, I think it should be open to anyone, but I'd like to start with each chair. We kind of just prompted some questions up here. So particularly, what projects have you worked on? What are your goals for 2023? What are you most proud of accomplishing? What's posed a challenge for your commission this year? This is an opportunity to provide an update to your fellow community members who may not see every day what goes on.
I can start. We weren't meeting a lot at the beginning of this year. There wasn't a lot of work for us. There were, referrals. Then George came on board in April, and things seemed to move forward. I think for us, what we wanted to work on and what happened at the end of last year, as Bill was ending his chairmanship, was the PA 490 issue came up and kind of. Are you familiar with the?
We haven't done anything with it, but.
Well, we kind of, we were, and then we had no planner, so it was kind of on hold. And when George came in, that was one thing that we had identified. And what George found out, and I think Savannah, as she's come on board, is there were these protected pieces of property that were getting tax breaks, for good reason. But it wasn't marked. We didn't have it marked in the POCD. We don't know if it was approved by the Board of Selectmen, because there's no record of it. And the assessor was coming to us because I think as she was new in her position and kind of trying to figure out, it was like peeling an onion. And so I think what's happened, if I think letters did go out. That was at one of our, maybe it was our last meeting upstairs or over in Town Hall, that they did follow through and send letters out to people kind of explaining, what was happening.
Who did that letter go to?
It went to, do you remember how many, it went to the people
7?
identified.
The nine property owners?
Yeah, the 7 or 9, whatever,
Yep.
yeah.
And then I think that 2 or 3 of them had the possibility of pursuing a forestry designation.
Mhm.
So Public Act 490 has 3 separate sections. One is for forestry, one is for ag, and one is for open space. And the Planning Commission has purview over the open space arm of it. For anyone who could be forestry, the assessor sent out a letter trying to encourage them to go through the forestry process. But if they weren't on the open space map, the assessor legally cannot give the PA 490 open space designation. And so people who were in that category were let know that that was the case.
Any responses from those letters?
I think 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, as of about a week and a half ago, there was 1 or 2. There were more that hadn't responded, which was interesting, but they could have responded since I met with George. But they,
Essentially, there's no policy in town
no,
that governs the application of PA 490 as it pertains to open space. Right?
Yep.
So I think what happened either along the way, some homeowners or property owners were smart. And they said, hey, we're gonna try to not take advantage, take advantage in the good sense of the word and reduce the taxes on their properties. But we can't find any record of what the decision-making process is. The way you assess the land is to be determined by, I think, the assessor, or we're not quite, I'm not quite sure.
Sure. So for the open space designation, it has to be on the Plan Conservation and Development open space map, and that's why they're taken off. But the forestry designation and the agricultural designation don't involve us in any capacity.
Right, we don't have
Yeah.
any process to determine what property qualifies and at what rate it would be taxed. So that's a big one for me this year.
Yeah.
yeah, I think,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. Now, from what I understand though, they might be able to apply for that open space, but there has to be a process by which they do it. It has to go on that, has to go to the Board of Selectmen. So even though they were sent the letter, it doesn't mean that they couldn't possibly get that designation, potentially. So that for us is a big thing, and helping the assessors with that. And so that might be something, anyway, so that's what we're working on that. That's a big thing. And I think for us too, we had about a year ago, I think it was, had a meeting or a forum with the Spirit, was it the Spirit Commission? About affordable housing? Was it the Spirit Commission that did that? That forum that we had? or people
They put
from
it
the
together. They put it together.
Well, we did, it was our forum, but they attended. That, the meeting that we had, that it was a planning commission forum where they came and spoke about the affordable housing plan. We completed our affordable housing plan according to the statute, 830G, which we made clear was not going to be the same thing as I think what people thought our affordable housing plan could be or wanted them to be. So we had this forum, and one of the things that came out is the wording that we chose in the POCD around character and things like that. And we had very robust discussions among the planning commission on how to address that. And one of the things that came up at this forum was, I know I had said, well, our intention wasn't to alienate people by the use of character. And somebody said, well, it's not intent, it's how it comes across, right? And so how do you balance that? And one of the things that came out was maybe we need somebody to come in and help us. And so out of that kind of born the idea of having Glenn Chalder come in and help us as he did with writing the POCD in 2017. And while we're at it, why don't we update it and then update it with some of these things like PA 490, the open space, some of the things that we're doing on conservation, invasives, you and I spoke about the pollinator pathway, there's some things and wording that we thought a lot, believe it or not, has changed in 6 years. It doesn't, and we just wanted to be sure that this was a working document that continued to work with us as we move forward. The other thing too is we got there partway about checklist and how do we go back and make sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do in the POCD. So that we are going to implement and then really use our meetings to follow up to make sure that it's a living, breathing document. So those, I think, are the highlights and goals. And for me, this is a highlight that we're having this joint meeting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good. We did continue to meet through Zoom, but we have that regulatory function. And for many years, our regulatory function in the Wetlands agency has really dominated our conservation issue. And we're hoping to make to draw more attention to our conservation goal. Because that's been so, really subsumed by the regulatory issues. So we have had discussions over several years. We did have the forestry stewardship. How do we steward our forests in town? We did have forestry plans. We have generated an awful lot of discussion on our commission of what is the best way to steward them. Brought in a lot of public discussion and something we're going to be revisiting, trying to figure out what's the best way. And that's another thing where the science has changed a lot since those plans were written. So we want to take our time. Unfortunately, the forests are on a completely different time schedule than we are, so we have time to do that. But that's something that we want to do in the future. We've had a lot of time in the past without really making any resolution other than let's hold off, let's not implement something before we fully understand it. And that gets into a lot of the other things. We have fields in town that need better management. And that, again, the management for the fields has changed. You're mowing it for grassland birds and you're mowing it for the pollinators. Because two different cycles for management. So we've been in town. I know I've been in discussion with the pollinator pathway, people have been in discussion with the town staff because the town sort of needs some guidance on these management issues. Over the years, the conservation commission has, there have been very rarely any referrals to us, so we're hoping to change that. going forward. And one of our tasks is also education of the public. One of the things, the biggest issues that we were talking about, the invasives and the sensitive plant natives, because they're tied in with the whole food chain and ecosystem. We need to get that information out to the public because there's only so much land the town can purchase and manage or steward. I'm on the board of the Simsbury Land Trust. There's only so much we can do, but it's what's happening in the individual, in the interspots between these things that directly impact those areas. So if we can get into the plan of conservation about more information for the public about how to maintain their own property, because that has a direct impact on the wild areas, that would be good. We're working with the change of staff. It's been great. We're looking to put a lot of things up on the websites for the public, because education should be one of our primary functions as a conservation commission. So we're looking forward to doing that. So we've got to pull our socks up on that one, and looking forward to doing it. But this is a start to start talking to the other land use boards. We can't be all on the same page, and we're looking forward to contributing more. Contributing the past to the conservation POCD, but we want to really have a part in that. Before it was just a letter. We want to be more active and participate in that. That's good. Thank you for giving us the, because I don't think we've ever done an annual report.
Yes, I was thinking about that.
So
So
it's like annual report.
I,
So you can be on the commission a long time and be like, oh, no one's ever mentioned that. So yeah, so we're looking more at our conservation things going forward. The regulations pretty much take care of themselves. The other part we have to. Yeah.
So as many of you may be aware, tonight was supposed to be kind of a kickoff opportunity with the Plan of Conservation and Development update, but unfortunately, George and our consultant are feeling unwell. So this was kind of meant to get you excited as that conversation started later. But I just wanted to frame why we're talking about the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I thought that the first page of the POCD did a really good job of explaining why we're here, why these discussions matter, why these strategies matter. And so just to read it, a plan of conservation and development is a document intended to establish a common vision for the future of a community and then recommend policies and action steps to attain that vision. It is intended to guide the community towards positive outcomes and to provide a framework for consistent decision-making with regard to conservation and development activities. And then this line I thought was salient to the conversation today. The plan will only be effective if it is understood and supported by the people of Simsbury and implemented by the town's boards and commissions. So by coming here today, we're going to talk about what you were given in the 2017 POCD to collaborate on. So hopefully we can start checking off these things and we can have those celebratory moments when we did that one. We got that one. We're moving further. So as we go through these strategies, I do just, again, want to reiterate, we only pulled out the ones that either the Planning Commission or the Conservation Commission were the lead, and the other commission was seen as a partner. And so we do believe that there are other strategies that intersect with both commissions' interests, but they weren't included in this presentation. Some of them fell under the Open Space Committee or the Department of Parks and Recreation. However, if you really do feel that that's a missing strategy and that's a place where your commissions have something to bring, want to bring to the table, are energized about that discussion, please, when I hand this out, write it down, because that only helps George, Glenn, and I later when we're trying to put work plans together or when we make revisions about who should be in charge of certain strategies. So I'm just going to quickly go through the strategies that you share and then talk about who the lead is and who the partners are. So there's a lot in what we want to protect, and we have strategy 5.2.8.1, preserve and protect watercourses, wetlands, floodplains, and their functions. The lead is the Conservation Commission. The partners are the Zoning Commission and the Planning Commission. Strategy 5.2.8.1 5.2 is encourage or require appropriate setbacks along stream belts, riparian setbacks, and from wetlands areas. So lead is conservation, partners are zoning and planning. Strategy 5.2.C.1, promote the use of low impact development strategies where and when appropriate to help manage runoff quality and promote stormwater infiltration. So this one was town, but the partners were Conservation Commission, Zoning Commission, and Planning Commission. So I thought I wanted to add it in there as well. And then 5.4.8.1, seek to preserve environmentally sensitive areas identified by deep in their natural diversity database, by the Farmington River Watershed Association, by the Simsbury Land Trust, and any similar comprehensive inventory. The lead here again, town, partners, conservation, zoning, planning. Encourage development to use habitat-friendly element designs, such as nesting structures, turtle tunnels, etc., when appropriate. And that lead was town, Conservation Commission, zoning, planning. And then we have encourage the use of a pre-application process for proposed development within sensitive environmental areas. That was just town, but I think that input from both commissions could be really helpful there. And then protect and preserve significant natural resources through the acquisition of conservation easements, purchase of land development rights, or cluster development rights. That one was also a town one, but I thought it kind of fed into the open space discussion, so I wanted to put it on the slide before you.
And also, it's weird on mine, they don't have A, B, C, D. They just have, oh yeah, I just realized that. Under 5.4A3, we do encourage the use of native plant species. And then 4 is prohibit the use of invasive or non-native plant species. Yeah, but I mean, if there's something more, you know what I mean? Could we even put a list of what invasive plants are in the POCD? Can we do a box?
It's always changing. But we feel me. I mean, there are, there's a Simsbury, the Connecticut Invasive Plant Working Group, which is always having, they're always updating.
So could we put links in the POCD?
We can reference best practices and put a note that they're ever evolving. So please check this SIPWIP.
Simsbury,
Yeah. Okay, so maybe that's the thing to do rather than.
Because we don't have resources to constantly update.
Well, no, and we wouldn't, I mean, this would be until you could do the update, but then, okay, so we could put something like that in, so that.
Some towns have done that. I know Newtown's done a very good job. They have a policy with lists of native pollinating plants, and they have like a 70-page document that they put together. It's
And
very,
Yukon
very extensive. In Yukon,
has a
but I-
municipal.
Yep, extension.
Landscape.
Architecture,
Yeah.
Right.
It's a.
I mean, we could put an appendix or something like that, and I think it's important to at least make an attempt to have a list of things so it's readily available. And then you can put in the caveat that, updates are available at
Updates are right,
et cetera.
yeah.
And I know we-
Because at least it's a list of things to get people on the.
Well, get some
The right
thinking
track,
about,
right.
right, exactly, and then we could put,
Right.
so we could do something like
And
that.
I know in open space and also accessory conservation, encouraging the town to, this is from Newtown, for the town to, when it's doing its plantings, to 100% native trees, 100% native shrubs, 75% native perennials, annuals, it doesn't matter. They don't live. But, for the town to adopt its own policies to set the example for,
A couple of towns, they actually have, the town council or their board of selectmen actually have an ordinance with that. So it's, if you don't codify that one. I don't think that'd be a policy, but certainly probably from conservation.
yeah, I think we're going to try to put it through open space and get it before the board of selectmen. I think that's the goal. But also, conservation's support. Because it's a, when we talk about the habitat, it's the plants.
Right.
If we have right plants, the habitat takes care of itself. We have plans from somewhere else in the world that don't support anything. it's difficult. So, I know the Simsbury Land Trust has just had an awful lot of money trying to remove a small section of plants from some, from another part of the world, and it's, we've got to take on this as a number one goal for the town. But it's a daunting, thing, but we got to start something.
Mhm. Right. So that I'd love to somehow get an appendix, get a list and and then say, go to this website or whatever, just check it. Okay.
I think, and fortunately, as you say, things have progressed so nicely, so I think it'd be easier to do now than it would have been 6 years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So I'm hearing great discussion. I'm going to hand out. Oops, sorry
I'm
about
so
that.
sorry.
Do you take one? I love paper. I know that it's not environmentally friendly.
Sort of ironic.
Yeah, I know. But we wanted to put the strategies in front of you because when we have really great discussions, we're jotting everything down, but then to have something that we can use to quantify what you prioritize as what you currently have as collaborative strategies just helps George and I when we're working on the work plan side. Out of everyone who attended, 80% agreed that this was the highest priority strategy. And as you can see, the list is not very long, and there are things that probably are missing in what you believe you should collaborate on. So if we see consensus around invasive species and getting something in subdivision regulations or the board ordinances, those are the type of things we'll use to be able to make stronger recommendations to Glenn, make stronger recommendations about where we go in the next year.
See, when looking at these strategies, the first strategy, preserve and protect water courses, those are, we actually have regulations
That
for
do
that.
that.
To do that, so, I'm not, even though we're in the wetlands agency, I'm not as concerned with making that a priority, because those are things we have to do
Yes.
anyway. And we do have, we've increased our setbacks along, our waterways. But when it says, is it habitat friendly or whatever?
Yep.
The word. I wanted to be more specific to environmentally sound plants. I mean, that's what those habitats are. So
In which one?
that where it says habitats.
The second one from the bottom.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at that. I'd like to see
design element. That's
Right.
so vague.
nesting and invasive, I would say, yeah, I would put
The
that
use
there
of
too.
native plants and the removal of invasives.
Yes.
Yeah, that's much more clear than
Yep.
habitat friendly. I mean, putting up boxes is nice, but you don't need boxes if you have the right land management.
Yeah.
Or stewardship.
You have any revisions to them? And again, we're hoping that we can strengthen the strategies you have and add additional ones, and this highlights that maybe this isn't sufficient. And this will be helpful for Glenn moving forward. And I don't think this will be the last conversation between both commissions, but this is just a strong starting place. I'm gonna give everyone like 5 minutes and then I'll nudge.
So do you want us to number all of these or just
Yeah.
check? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you feel it's done, feel free to write, we've done it, or it's a lower, yes.
Could you elaborate on what the application process would be for that strategy?
Sure, so I think it could become a lot of things, whether it be, just to provide an example, on this invasive species topic, if it doesn't get codified through the subdivision regulations, but we know that there's a lot of resources that are beneficial, maybe in instances of developments over 3 acres, we provide every single applicant with a packet of this information, or we've got a PDF that we send them and say, it's strongly recommended that you incorporate these strategies into your development proposal. So that if it was a subdivision and it came to this commission and you saw that no invasive species best management practices or no native plants were included, having that be a part of the pre-application process, it kind of helps you make the applicant say, why didn't you do that? We recommended that to you. That was something that we've decided on and we have consensus across our boards. We really want you to do that. Obviously, it's stronger to get it in your regulations in some capacity, but it's those sort of things. What do you want to be sure that applicants get when they come in besides the application, the GIS map, and whatever else we give them that helps them understand the process is beginning?
And we found with our applicants, they know that we want to see the native plants and not plants that are going. And so generally, the applications that come before us, they are better at giving us the plants we want. So we haven't even had to do any regulation or anything. They just know what would make it easier for them to get through the process. So giving them that information would be great. I mean, we're getting it in the regulations is even greater.
Yeah.
But, in the meantime, if we can get all of the land use groups saying we want better plans.
I agree.
And if inspiration hits you at 3:00 in the morning, as it hits me from time to time, feel free to email George or myself, anything else that piques your interest.
So you said this will go to George and Glenn?
Yep, so
Okay.
George and I will probably create a summary,
Yep.
get that to them that way. Yep.
Why do I have a feeling that both of them are Yankees fans and we just have one lost they watch that first Eyes are Sox fan here.
I don't even know what you're talking about. There's a ball on TV tonight.
Baseball. A ball, it is, it's called baseball. You got everything going. Baseball, hockey, basketball.
All right, I still see pens, so I'll give you 2 minutes and then we'll. Alrighty. So just to end this portion of the meeting, I always like to talk about what's next because it's difficult when you have a meeting that energizes you and then it fizzles out and it's like, well, where are we going to go from here? And so I've already kind of discussed what the plan is, but we're going to take all of your strategies. We'll find a way to summarize them, maybe make a fun word cloud, like word clouds. But we'll coordinate with Glenn to see how these things can be put into implementation matrix. Some of these strategies already done? Are some missing? It seems like some are missing. We'll want to be sure that they get added. Should some be higher priorities than others? This will help him in his process of the update of the Plan of Conservation and Development. But then to make sure that these things are also implemented as we continue into the next year, it'll really help George and I in terms of work planning. So what are the highest priorities? Those are the things we should be working on first. Are they short range projects, long range projects? It'll help us let you know realistically, hey, it's going to take a quarter to get through this one, or this is a little bit bigger. This might be a half year project, but knowing how you prioritize them helps us ensure that we're meeting the needs of each commission. So that's where we are on that. And with that being said, Madam Chairs, I want to give the Wetlands Conservation Commission an opportunity to adjourn so they don't have to. But you're more than welcome to.
And we'll see each other in open space.
When is the next, I didn't miss the meeting last week, did I?
I don't know. I think so, but I thought
It's usually the first Wednesday, but,
But it changed because of the holiday. So, we'll look.
okay, 4:30?
But because we both serve on the open space committee, or committee, we can continue these conversations.
Yeah.
So we can also share informally that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
How it is done.
Is it a 4:30 meeting tomorrow, Marcia? Okay.
Oh
Oh dear.
But yeah, I think there's a different time. For this, the holidays.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay. I will check that. Okay, yeah, depending on the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, so good to see you.
If you don't mind leaving your strategies of where you're sitting, I'll grab them before the end of the meeting. Thank you.
It's like those program evaluations.
Yes.
Julie, you need a ride home?
I think I might.
Just sit over here. Okay.
I'll just grab them. I'm here, why not?
We will sit around the table with us.
No, that should be official. Part of the, I'm part of the public.
So Savannah, was Glenn? Are we planning that maybe he'll come in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
So both George and Glenn are sick, so it's not definitive yet when he will be able to come. But since can't move forward without Glenn. I put a draft motion to postpone at least till the October 25th
Okay.
meeting. If it needs to be postponed further, we can do that at the next meeting, but just follow process on this side.
Okay, I know we had talked about him coming at the beginning, the first meeting of the month rather than the second meeting, but, I'd be in favor of trying to do this in 2 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make a motion that we postpone the POCD update introductory discussion to the October 25th, 2022 regular meeting of the planning commission.
I will second.
Marcus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Joe, you're not seated.
That's right, Joe, you're not seated.
Point of order.
Well, don't you need to send me because I'm an elected commissioner?
Well, because you sat and we already, because the meeting is already,
Oh, okay.
no, so.
Yeah, you can
No,
stay.
you can
Oh, I'm gonna
stay.
stay.
You can stay,
That's
but
fine.
I know, so.
Just can't vote.
So all those in favor of the motion to postpone the introductory discussion to our October 25th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, it passes unanimously.
There are 2 referrals from the zoning commission. And I always like to put the statute on the slide just to kind of reorient what we're doing, why we're doing it. So proposed zoning regulations shall be referred to the planning commission and the report shall contain the findings on consistency of a proposed regulation with the plan of development of the municipality and any other recommendations that the planning commission deems relevant. So before you tonight, you have 2 proposed text amendments. Madam Chair, would you like me to provide an overview? Sure. So the first application is 2232, and this application is for a text amendment to the zoning regulations, Hartford Simsbury Form-Based Code and Simsbury Center Code for the purpose of, it's a 2-purpose text amendment. The first is to prohibit cannabis establishments in the Simsbury Center Code and the Hartford Simsbury Code, and then to permit the use in specific zoning districts in the town zoning regulations. And so staff's recommendation is that the application is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. We pulled out strategies that could be relevant to your discussion. And we provided a draft motion if that's helpful for you in this process.
Did they, so I'm just curious, when it said certain districts, were they specific about what districts? I'm just curious as to where, I mean, it makes sense, I get why they would have said not Simsbury Center, but I didn't know if they had.
Yeah, it was, I think we should like really take a deep dive in it, because I do think that they are being very specific in the zones in which they are requiring it. in.
Yeah, and I just wasn't sure what, is it 1 zone, is it 3 zones? I was just curious as to what that was.
Yes, it would be allowed in the B3 through special exception. And the changes would allow a minimum of 1 retail establishment in the general vicinity of the commercial node at the intersection of Bushy Hill Road and Route 202. And then I believe it's also in both industrial zones.
Oh, down there,
Right down
okay.
there.
Thank you, Joe. I was like trying to.
And that's called Hartford Simsbury.
Hartford's, I believe it's not going to be allowed in the Hartford, or is that the industrial side? It's a pad.
That's not.
No, that's down here. Yeah, that doesn't have a separate code, so that would be in the zoning regulation itself. It's gonna prohibit in both the Simsbury Center Code and I believe so in the Hartford's code.
They're looking to
Yes,
guide zoning to have 1 establishment in 1 little section of town.
that is my understanding.
What was that? That's,
Who's doing that, Julie?
The zoning commission is referring to us, proposal in their zoning regulations or text, to say cannabis establishments, there can be 1 in town near the McDonald's over near Canton. None in the Simsbury Center, none anywhere else.
What, retail?
Retail.
Yep,
Yeah,
industrial,
sorry, retail.
yep,
You can
industrial,
grow anywhere.
industrial.
Right.
But yes, you can, yeah.
oh, so this is for the retail.
Yeah, this is strictly.
Retail,
Yeah,
sorry, thank you.
That is pretty specific.
I don't think it aligns at all with P O C D to grow. Or not grow, but grow.
Yeah, promote economic development. right?
Yeah, I don't think it's aligned with P O C D at all.
I think it's too restrictive.
I do. I think it's very restrictive.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, if you make a negative recommendation, you can express why. And if you do make a negative recommendation, it forces a supermajority for the zoning commission when they act upon the regulations. So that's where that falls as well. That's the implication.
So Savannah and Nicole, the text that was handed out or in the Dropbox.
Yes.
Can you explain? I'm having a hard time understanding, usually when we talk about a text amendment, it's more like, okay, here's the existing zoning regulation
Sure.
and it's redlined or crossed out. What's the first couple pages that we're looking at?
Sure. So the first page is the first, let me.
Make sure we're looking at the same thing.
Yep, the first 3 pages were created by George. It's the framework of what is being proposed. And so these aren't the regulations, it's just kind of that high level, what is being proposed currently. And so in the Simsbury Center Code, it would prohibit all categories of cannabis establishments in the Simsbury Center. And the Hartford Simsbury Form-Based Code, it would prohibit all categories of cannabis establishments in the Hartford Simsbury Code. So both of those codes are prohibit. And then the last pages, you have this one.
Though, I'm sorry.
Is that the Silverman group, the old?
It's the low near Avon.
The old Hartford?
Yes, that pad.
Okay, gotcha. So in there. Okay.
Not the one near Avon Canton, the one directly down Hot Meadow.
Yeah.
That's a pad and that has its own code.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry, where is that again?
Sure.
It's where the
Dra-
Hartford used to, the Hartford.
Oh, the Hartford.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
They have their own.
Yes, yeah, I forgot that, but yeah, so.
And not to pull pages apart, but this page
Yeah.
shows both of those use tables, which would prohibit. And so then from the town of Simsbury zoning regulations, the first clump, so A through D, are to remove the moratorium language and relocate the definitions to the definition section of the regulations. And then there's 2 substantive areas. The first is the special exception in B3. And then George's comment is these changes would allow a maximum of 1 retail establishment in the general vicinity of the commercial node at the intersection of Bushy Hill and Route 202. So it is in that near McDonald, that kind of area of town. And then the second one is to allow cannabis establishments in the industrial zone, so both I-1 and I-2 by special exception. That's what they're proposing at this time.
So it could be in more than just that one, but the 2 others you need to, they would have to go to zoning in order to get approved in I-1 and I-2, you said?
But not retail.
Retail would also, special exception.
Retail in
Yep.
those 2, okay.
Yep, but only 1 retail would be allowed.
In that, but then the I-1, I-2, they could do retail, but they would have to go to zoning to get permission to do that because they need a special exception.
What are the other 2 places?
We're calling out, my apologies. We call out cannabis retailer, hybrid retailer, and dispensary facility in the business zone. So I believe that only those 3 would be allowed in B3, and there'd only be 1 of those.
Right.
And then, and I apologize for the confusion, this is a lot. It's cultivator, micro cultivator, food and beverage manufacturer, product packager, and transporter. So those would be allowed in the industrial zone. Those don't have a limit on the number. Only the retail-oriented uses have a cap and are restricted to.
So no retail, but those, the second that you just mentioned, they would still need to go and get a special exemption. And they would go to zoning to get that.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's the retail is what they're.
So they really just want 1 retail store in
Very
town.
specific area in town.
Which would be good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, yeah. Well, they could do it next to TCL. That'd be your buildings.
So you got your P O C D, Julie?
I do.
I do too.
So, Savannah and Nicole, if you could back up to yeah.
Yep.
Let's see.
I can also pull up the strategies.
So, okay, so town staff felt that this text amendment is supported by the POCD strategies 8.1, 8.2, and 9.1. Yeah, which ones are those?
8.1 is promote and strengthen villages and unique places to sustain and enhance quality of life.
I see no connection.
Compatible, promote.
The high level though is guide development in ways that reflect and respect historical development patterns and create areas with a sense of place. They're going on the historical.
Well, yeah, and I promote
Right.
compatible development in Simsbury Center.
Or maybe that's
Chairman Levitt's that's the goal under it that
that's a goal.
8.1 strategy.
that's the blue box. And then number 2 is the promote compatible development in Simsbury Center and recognize the development elsewhere could impede.
Oh, that is, okay, so I was looking at these, but guide development in ways that, yeah.
Reflects historical development patterns
Well, there was
and
some-
creates areas with a sense of place.
Ensure that future development will reflect and or enhance the form of its surrounding area as well as uses appropriate for that area. Well, McDonald's, you get munchies.
No, but there are a couple. I mean, it shows that we have an opportunity to tighten and be less restrictive in some of our terminology in the POCD.
Mhm.
But we also said that we wanted to grow business. I will find it because I did.
That's 9.1.
Is it?
Yep.
On page 82.
Yeah, but I like what's on page 80 better. Sorry. Page 2. Promote economic
I'm just
development
going
in
with yours.
Simsbury in order to provide jobs, goods and services, and net tax revenue.
So for the retail establishments, there's one location, minor impact on economic development. I don't know why. From an economic, from a tax basis, employment basis, limited it to one location seems a little severe.
Well, especially since there's not the same restriction on being able to grow, cultivate, farm, whatever. You know, I mean, they need a special exemption, but you can do a lot of that in more than one zone. And so if you're doing that, why not be able to establish a retail in those zones as well? It seems kind of, it's almost like, well, you can grow it and transport it, but you can't sell
But
it.
those are limited to the industrial zones.
Right, that's true, that's true.
But you still need a special exception.
That's right.
And if you're growing, producing, and exporting, it's still generating economic gain.
I have no problem with what they're allowing in the industrial zone. It's the limits on the retail, but I think it's not in alignment for me personally.
So it should be broader.
I think it should be broader. I think we should let the free economy support what retail units are available. I feel actually for some of the CBD dispensaries or retail stores that are in town today, they may have gotten into town with a strategic mindset to potentially expand their product base, and now we're limiting them. You know, I think there's some constraints.
Where else, if they didn't go, let me ask this question, if it wasn't in the town center, what other zoning areas could they do a retail that wouldn't, that, you know, I mean, obviously they don't want to center town, but out of curiosity, what,
Let me pull up a zoning map. I think
yeah,
that
thank
would be
you. 'Cause
helpful.
I
Yeah.
don't have my map.
I guess for clarification, is the objection the number, location, or both?
I think it's the overall limit of both location as well as how many. For me personally.
It is very specific.
I mean, how many package stores do we have in town? And where are they located and how is this different?
So the only B3 zones that I see in my cursory glance are, so that's the corner that it currently is being proposed in. There's a B3 zone over here. I don't know where this is in orientation to the Cumberland Farms, but we're probably around that area. And then, ooh, we have another B3 zone up off of Stratton Brook Road. If it were just to be business, and I'm going to zoom out, and I know this probably isn't super helpful, but it's those red and pink, not excluding the center. There's some red and pink up at the top here. We have some again towards East Granby. A little bit more near that B3 zone. But
One per zone or one in the town and must be?
it's drafted as one in the town at any time, and it's also drafted that one be within 1,500 feet of that intersection. So it's limited just to the corner B3 zone in its current draft form.
Now you know why George got sick.
I'm here to write a different motion. We'll work together. It's, yeah.
That's even more restrictive benefit. Yeah, yeah, no, it is restricted. Any other, I mean, what do people think overall?
I agree, it doesn't make sense as to why it's in this one spot that has to be 1,500 feet from the intersection. And it's not accessible really to anybody in town. So, and we can only have one, like anyone who's in the center of town. Basically, it's not even accessible for them.
So we could, if we chose not to give a positive referral, then give our suggestions as to, or explain why and maybe make suggestions. Okay.
Yes, and the statute says that you can make any other recommendations that you deem relevant. So following the statute, we could create a draft motion where you address the consistency, and then we could say, like, per this section of the statute, the planning commission makes the following recommendations, and that could be what is read into the record at the public hearing.
Okay.
If you do make that negative
I mean, they could
recommendation,
always reject our, whatever we propose, but at least it's on record.
But it triggers a supermajority.
correct.
Okay. Somebody want to,
That's a supermajority of the plan. of the zoning.
Zoning.
Yeah.
which is 4-2 or 5-1, or super
Well,
majority.
2/3, right? That's a majority, 2/3.
So 4-2. They'd have to get 4. Okay. Well, then,
Just for the sake of argument, I'm sure this passed unanimously.
but no, I said our motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
But I think it's important to go on record that.
Yep.
You know, our concerns over it.
I agree. Okay, so,
And just so I'm clear, our judgment is strictly regarding these three aspects of the P O C D.
no, this
No.
is for this text amendment around the cannabis,
For the zoning
for
regulations.
the zoning
Right,
regulations.
but are we evaluating it as in reference to
Yes,
these three,
Anything.
sections? of the
You can expand it, Don.
Yeah,
Like
it
those
could
are
be,
their
I
justifications.
think 9.1
this-
is the big one for me.
staff suggested.
Oh, that's.
That's
Yep.
what they're saying,
Oh,
right?
there, oh, okay.
But we can look at the whole plan.
Yes.
So we're, okay, so our scope is broader than that.
We're correct. And someone may make a motion and you can vote against the motion if you like that text. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, All right, so does someone,
I think Savannah Nicole's
I'm working.
going to draft.
oh, she's gonna draft something for us,
Yes.
okay, so
Just,
talk amongst yourselves.
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
We can provide a rationale for what we would like to do, but I'm not sure I am familiar with the rationale for the recommendation. Why the one? Locational.
Right. Oh, what, were you at that meeting? Like what, that's a good question. So you're asking why did they only pick one?
My understanding is that was just a directive that came from the zoning commission, and I'm missing where it came from. But that's what staff was recommended to create. And so if that's what you feel is, I'm hearing that that's where the inconsistency lies. And so maybe let me try to draft
Okay.
something.
All right,
Yeah.
I would- Just for purpose of discussion. was
Right.
curious
Yeah.
why.
So it was what the zoning came up with. I guess their discussion was this is how they were addressing the cannabis issue, you know, retail and industrial. And so that's what they came up with.
I
And
mean, part of the issue with the manufacturing side, if you will, is that that already exists in town.
Mhm.
So they couldn't restrict that because that already exists in the various zones for that. So they couldn't restrict it. So they had to kind of grandfather that in. Their concern was the retail stores popping up. And that, I mean, that's why McDonald's is down there. That was before I lived in town, but you know, I've heard from people who are from town that's like, that was a huge deal because they wanted to build a McDonald's in the center of town.
Mhm.
And they were like, well, you can build it, but it's gotta be down here because, you know, we don't want to go down. So some of it may just be that.
I suspect
You
that's
know,
the
a
case. I
concern
just
of-
didn't hear anything
of
about
that.
that.
So that, and the town tends to get more of like that heavy duty, you know, retail type places. Malls down there, and Farmington, whatever that is. Yeah, and you know,
or, yeah.
it's 44.
Actually,
Can't really tell it's Simsbury anymore.
It's
I
over in North
I
Campbell.
was surprised when I
Yeah.
moved up. because I was in-
What's that? Twin Little
I
Town?
mean, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I have since accepted that.
Oh,
Simsbury,
stop.
right?
It was a great amount of for Kent
Yeah,
Road,
yeah.
Desert
You know, we get
area.
the benefits of that
Yeah,
without having to drive through it.
yeah.
I put a draft motion or draft recommendation, it's that bottom part. And if you have a different strategy you'd like to use, strategy 9.1 states that the plan of conservation and development should promote economic development in Simsbury in order to provide jobs, goods and services and net tax revenue. The current proposal to restrict retail establishments in number, location and district is not consistent with this goal. We can amend it, but I just hope that's a starting place.
I wish we could say something, but because to me, it just felt too restrictive. But I don't know how you say that. I mean, that's not a.
I think it's.
Right there,
it's
yeah.
The current proposal to restrict retail establishments in number, location, and district is not consistent with this goal.
Yep.
And I think
Okay,
that's
that's,
fair.
yeah, so it says, so it does say it in so many words. Okay.
You could add the planning commission feels that it's too restrictive. We could just flat out, we could add that.
Well, but you do have restrict in there.
Mhm.
In number, and you say in number, location and district. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's succinct.
I don't. Because it doesn't make sense. And it's like, and exactly what you were saying about like, there's CBD stores all across town, they're gonna be upset. And that's gonna be the problem whenever this happens. So why? Because there's no answer to why.
So you would put in stronger language in.
Yeah.
Like, what would you put in, Marcus?
I like that, just saying that we just don't think that it makes sense because, you know, how are we expanding the businesses that we already have? Why are we restricting the businesses we already have for this thing that doesn't even exist yet? We'd rather have growth and expansion with
But does zoning have specific criteria as to what types of businesses are going to be located in what zones? To Joe's point about no fast food restaurants in the middle of town.
Yeah, it's all through the regulations. What's a permitted use, what's not, what's allowed by special exception. They write the rules.
But in this case, when they're talking about B3, there's other B3 districts that, and they just limited to this specific
Come on,
B3. I mean,
let's not kid ourselves. Somebody's trying to restrict the number of.
right,
It's
exactly,
as simple as that.
right.
Well, it is.
Okay,
exactly.
and it's whether it's a moral issue that somebody has, or, resistance to change or whatever, that's
Exactly.
that's the
That's
culmination
my
of.
point. I mean, it's
Yes.
inconsistent. I
Now,
mean,
I may or may not agree with that, but regardless, I think it's not consistent with the P O C D.
I added the second bullet point. The planning commission is unclear on the rationale to limit the number of retailers to one establishment and would encourage reconsideration as to a more permissive stance. Just to start the conversation, we can change it, trying to summarize.
Yeah, I like that, but I would say reconsideration to a more permissive stance. Because, you know what I mean? I wouldn't use the word because to ensure the growth of existing businesses or something like that. So that kind of ties that down. Because I mean, that's what we're really talking about is we have these CBD oil places and that, and they, to Julie's point and also to Marcus's point, they may have started that business thinking, well, eventually it's going to be legalized and
Mhm.
I've already established myself, I can then move and
Into
expand.
that,
So I think that's.
Well,
what
that's
we're
a
saying.
risk to take,
Yeah.
right, Joe?
Yep. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's always a risk when you're,
Yeah.
you start a business.
Yeah.
But they're already, I mean, it is a way to,
I mean, that was part of
would
our
they
discussion. so
leave
we
and
should-
go somewhere where it's more permissive? I don't know. I mean,
Well, I'm just
so
saying
if
that
you're
was-
trying to establish and keep businesses in
Right.
town.
Right, but that was part of the discussion, so I think if we want to memorialize that and send it back to them, I just thought we should follow on it.
Yeah.
Make sure they understand why.
Yeah, maybe in front of existing, we put growth of new and existing.
Yeah,
businesses.
good. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else in the P O C D that, that we're overlooking that? Is there anything in there that, I'm just trying to think of the other argument for returning a positive referral. Anything, it's a contentious subject to some, right?
What's funny is staff is the one that did the research for how it was aligned to P O C D.
Yeah.
Did staff let the zoning commission know where it was aligned? Did they actually reference the P O C D when they were having their conversations? Not to put you on the spot, Savannah.
George is taking the lead on the text amendment, and so
I
I,
mean,
When's the public hearing?
well, it is the 17th, so it's next Monday, and I put the strategies up just to kind of prod the conversation
Yep.
a little.
Well, here's enterprises. So 9.1B means retain existing businesses and support their growth and expansion in Simsbury, which we've kind of said with
Okay,
that.
I'm not buying the progression of CBD stores to cannabis retail.
You're not?
Oh, I would.
well, it's,
It's been in our products.
Yeah.
yeah, but you can't,
It's a vertical.
they're gonna have to change, they're gonna have to do a lot of investing in the store. You can't just,
There's licensing.
well, there's licensing requirements, but the stores are set up differently than just the CBD oil store.
Right.
I don't know the owners of any of those CBD stores, so I don't know what their plans would be.
But that would be growth,
Invest.
potentially. So support the startup of new enterprises and seek to attract new business.
That's all under 9.1.
Right,
So-
9.1, right.
9.1. And I think that's the one that's supposed to.
Ooh, look at this, consider rezoning land to commercial in the Bushy Hill Lane area across from Simsbury Commons.
Yeah, but that's what she had.
But that's, but across from Simsbury Commons, that's where they're talking.
That piece of property is a little triangle.
Oh, the little triangle, well, is that where?
Mhm.
Oh, do you want my vote? I mean, I know you.
No, I'm
I
just,
do.
I'm trying to.
I'm trying to go into like community character.
Well, yeah, okay, we can't use that one because we're getting rid of it.
We're not getting rid of it, we're just,
No, that's going away.
but those I think are I think 9.1
9.1.
is probably the most
You
salient.
know, so maybe Simsbury's character will change from a bunch of jokes to a bunch of money.
Bohemians.
Can't vote.
Start your dreadlocks now.
You guys have a very dated perception of what these.
I know,
shows
I
are.
No, I don't actually, yeah.
It's like the 1970s.
No, it's not.
I mean, these are retail establishments that are, that's what, regulated by law, right? They're like liquor stores. Like, I think we
They
have
are
to
now,
open.
Judy. They
our
are
minds.
They are now.
They
Oh,
weren't,
there's
they
the
weren't
red,
2
but-
years ago.
No, they are not.
But
But
they are now. You're
let's be
absolutely
cutting edge, like,
They're
let's.
actually more like the
Right.
Apple Store.
right.
It's a lot more like the Apple Store than it is like a
Yeah.
pack.
No, it is amazing with the price, yeah.
So
No, I agree.
it's.
So again, I don't care what their product is, the P O C D in my mind is looking to bring in new business into town. And by not putting it in Simsbury Center and by excluding it, it's continuing to go against, I'm gonna say the word wrong, is it the charrette, where we're trying to like.
Yeah.
Grow the center of town and make it a center.
I actually.
So
do
Julie,
care
would
about-
you go so far as to say reconsider the decision on the Simsbury Center
Yeah,
code?
they were cute little retail shops.
8.3.
That's me personally. Everyone needs to vote on this. I don't want to make it so.
Well, I personally would stick with what we have, you know, like, because well, and the reason for that, I do care about what the business is. In this case, I think you're right. There's a negative, or very often a negative connotation to what these retail stores are. And I agree with you. It's not what it was even a few years ago. So I have no problem with this. I do think there might, and I can't think off the top of my head, I don't know, I would want a Target to go in, you know, in downtown, you know, like a big buy, I shouldn't say Target, but, you know, there would be some things I would want to see in Simsbury Center, because I would like to see it keep its cute little, you know,
Character.
character there, but,
I totally
but-
agree, but boutique.
No, no,
little
oh, no.
Businesses or
No, that's
retail, that's exactly what we want.
no,
them
no,
to.
that's exactly, so that's what I'm saying, I do care about, when you said, oh, I don't care about the business, I do, in this case, I don't care if it's this store, that's what I'm saying, but there might be some that it would, but in this case, so I don't know, do you guys want to expand it, or do you want to keep it to 9.1, or do you want, I mean, I feel comfortable feeling like this will get in front of them and potentially could have a positive. I think if we went too far, it might not, but I don't know. It doesn't, we need to, go ahead.
I think that motion sums up and summarizes sort of top level what we've been talking about.
Madam
I
Chair.
mean, at least in my read.
Yeah, and commissioners, I added in that last one, would encourage consideration to a more permissive stance in number, location, and district, just to kind of hone that in again. If you don't think it should be all three, if you think it should just be,
No, I think we
Number.
can do that. Yeah,
just to kind of say, those are the areas you.
I think that summarizes it well.
I think-
Yeah,
I also think there's a larger thing here that bothers me with this, not with this part. The fact that, I mean, are we zoning, you know, we have the POCD and we have zoning regs, and they're not there to, they're not there for us to enforce our morality or our outlook on these things on the town. We're here to do a specific job. We have a document.
So, Joe, I'm gonna, you know, oppose that a little bit.
Yeah.
We do say you can't have gambling establishments. You can't have houses of
Okay.
prostitution. Those are moral issues. You know, cannabis consumption was a moral issue 5 years ago. You know, the culture's changed. So let's be careful, you know, making a statement like that.
Okay, then I will amend that statement. My problem with this is, it's legalized in the state.
Yeah.
The state has said, you can sell cannabis, you can open a retail, and then it's not up to me or anybody else to say, oh, I disagree with that, and I'm gonna restrict it to this little triangle, so, you know, we kind of give it a wink and a nod. But, you know, I think it is too restrictive, and it's not our job then to, you know, in my opinion, it's the state law, you know, we need to conform to. And I agree with you. I think my word of morality was a little too broad, so I appreciate your saying that. But, you know, the state has said we can do it. So, you know, that doesn't mean then we kind of, like I said, give it a wink and a nod and kind of stuff it off in the corner. So.
You know, the next referral is an extension of the moratorium.
To remove the moratorium language from it, which I will
No,
support.
but no, it replaces it.
Yes, just if they're both being included as separate text amendments that are gonna go at the meeting on the 17th, because if the commission doesn't act by the 7th, I think the moratorium ends in November.
Yep.
We're getting close. So the purpose of having the moratorium also go through this process is if the zoning commission reaches the end of that public hearing and says, we're not gonna be done by the moratorium's end date, they can approve the text amendment to extend the moratorium without worrying about not having a moratorium in place.
We had a lot of dialogue on that a year ago.
Yeah, we
didn't
were in
think that
favor of
we
it then.
should. Right. We thought we should have done sooner.
But the
Right.
rationale back then was the state hadn't ironed out everything. And the requirements and regulations, you know, weren't available for the towns to analyze and implement. I don't know what the status, if that's still a valid reason for a moratorium.
Well, they're just looking to extend it, correct?
Yeah, till May.
May 2026.
6 months?
But yeah, we talked
Yeah.
about sending a negative, maybe we did.
I think we
I think we
said
didn't, but we
up
said,
to a year and sooner if
yeah,
possible.
Right,
We
right.
said we would prefer, because we wanted to hop on the bandwagon of business development.
Yes.
yeah.
And
That
There was
our
some
goal.
And
caveat.
we're consistent in that methodology.
Yeah.
With this discussion.
Right, we didn't want to hold off. We want to be one of the first towns to get their stuff organized.
All right, so let's go back if we can to the, yeah, so to the draft amendment. So do people feel comfortable with what Savannah?
Let's try to make it as
And do
big
you
as
prefer Savannah or Savannah Nicole?
Savannah Nicole.
You do, okay,
Yes,
thank you.
or SN, that works too.
Oh, SN?
Yeah.
So, so below, it's strategy 9.1 states that the plan of conservation and development should promote economic development in Simsbury in order to provide jobs, goods, and services, and net tax revenue. The current proposal to restrict retail establishment number, location, and district is not consistent with this goal. The planning commission is unclear on the rationale to limit the number of retailers to one establishment and would encourage reconsideration to more permissive stance in number, location, and district to ensure the growth of new and existing businesses.
Not to belabor, but do we need to be clear on the rationale?
It's the same thing. I mean, can we go for a little more brevity?
Yeah.
It's just,
How about the,
it's inconsistent with economic growth. As defined in the PLCD. Right?
so how would you rewrite that down?
Yeah, I'm just looking for brevity here and just saying that, you know, the current proposal is inconsistent with economic growth as, you know, our interpretation of economic.
Planning commission is, I don't want to say would encourage, I think the unclear is not necessary. I think it's sort of like, the planning commission would encourage reconsideration to be more permissive in number of location. I don't think you need the first one. I know that's what we
Does it
said
have
when
to
you were
be more
typing it.
I'm not comfortable with more permissive, because then, I don't know, I think that kind of
Would encourage
implies more, morality into it, but it's just, I mean,
A more-
it's plain and
a
simple.
wider stance or,
I mean, just looking at it, interpreting just interpreting the POCD, it's not consistent with economic development if you're going to restrict it to one store in one location. Without any editorial implications.
oh, and there you go.
So Don, you're suggesting take the second
How
one.
about an increase, would encourage increasing
The number.
the number, location, and district to ensure growth?
There's nothing stopping that business from also selling CD and putting out the other business.
Huge, good point.
We need to have something that would at least make it more equitable for other businesses to compete in town.
But it's up to zoning to put that forth. It's up to us. We're interpreting their proposal, and our interpretation is that it's inconsistent with economic development as defined in the POCD.
So to that point, would you, the very last clause, would you do, allow districts to ensure or economic development instead of the growth of new and existing businesses, and just state economic development? Or to align to economic development opportunities.
I like having the strategy, I like having strategy 9.1 states, right? It states, it says the current proposal isn't consistent with this goal. I think, I like stating that, so it's clear, because this is a public hearing. So I'd like to keep that in, and then I like what you're saying about rewording the second bullet. But I personally like having that in, because if it's going on record, I want people to know why we're, this specifically was in the POCD, and this is why.
Then we can just say it, promote economic development in Simsbury, did we say it up above? Yeah,
It is, it's
yeah, so it's already above.
Right. But I like I like the way it kind of leads in. And then saying the planning commission would encourage increasing the number of location and lot districts to provide economic development opportunities in the town of Simsbury.
Promote, maybe that's, I wrote provide, but encourage. Who said we've encouraged
To
them?
promote, you could say promote.
You say encourage or recommend.
Yeah, you could say recommend.
Which one's stronger?
And you strike.
Oh, there you
would.
go.
It's the
How about
commission
recommends?
recommends.
Oops.
Yeah, get rid of the wood.
There you go. Planning commission recommends increasing the number of location lot districts to encourage economic development opportunities in the town of Simsbury.
And is a location in allowed districts redundant?
No, I think they're different things. So we have a location, like right now, they have it in a district, but they're restricting its location, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So-
Right, there's
So
other.
I think there is,
Yeah, okay, I got it.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
15 feet from the.
Yeah, it was like 1,500 feet from there.
It's a shed.
Yeah.
So I make a motion to return I guess it's
Negative. Right?
a negative referral as written in the draft motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Yeah, discussion. All right, voting time. All those in favor of the negative referral and the new draft amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The negative referral and proposed changes passed unanimously. Good discussion. Thank you. I know.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Just making sure that it gets properly put in the minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
This followed the same thing. I have the same recommendation. I use the same strategies. If the commission wants to change, we can work together. We'll fix it right now.
So the real reason for this is in case whatever happens in the public
Right.
hearing, if they don't have that, so they really need an extension to make sure, I mean, the bottom line is they, without it.
Push the envelope on that statement. They had a year.
I was just.
They did not have to do it a day before the
I was just gonna say
moratorium.
that.
Like, there's some planning with that, like, you don't hold your. Town meeting.
So let's think of the implications.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
You know, if we return a negative referral.
Which we have.
So
Oh,
again,
okay.
again, it can, you know, it's considered by the zoning commission, but there, it only triggers a supermajority for their motion.
so
If
what,
it doesn't go through and we do a
We gotta make
negative
sure
on
we,
this,
you know, we
what
don't,
can
we don't,
happen?
I don't wanna put them in a position where the zoning regulations aren't ready to go.
Right?
And the moratorium expires. Then I guess the zoning regulations as written would be law.
If they didn't adopt a regulation prior to the moratorium being removed, it is being understood in the planning community that the code compliance officer, if an application were to come in, would have to make a determination of like use. Initially, I think communities thought that that could be liquor. It would have to go to the town attorney. This wouldn't just be a simple solution, but it is being, a lot of planners and a lot of the not literature, but like discussion around this topic is saying that it would, if it's a retailer, it's the like use is a retail establishment of any type. If it's a industrial use, the like use would fall industrial. So it wouldn't necessarily end up with the same level of permitting as your liquor permits. But it'd have to go to the town attorney. This wouldn't just be a quick decision by your code compliance officer, but it's also not a simple one that gets made either.
So I don't want to put them in a bad position. I don't know if we need 6 months. I think I would support more frequent increments and push the envelope to get something done.
why 6 months? Or actually almost 7.
October.
No, so
Yeah,
November.
you're right.
November,
Thank you.
no,
My math is right.
November to May. So.
Yeah.
Oh, November to May, okay, because it runs out so. We know for that. So why, yeah, that's a good point though, Julie. Why 6 months if they're having the public hearing?
I don't want to speak for anyone, but I believe that is just following what was proposed initially. And a lot of communities are going in 6-month increments.
Okay,
Well, for government, it's not.
I was just thinking how long it's taken me to hire people. I was like, 6 months is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is. I mean, the question really is the question that was raised is, you know, they've had a year to do this. Why is it, you know, the month before the expiration of the moratorium, all of a sudden we're wrestling with this? But we can't answer that by then shortening the leash on them.
Well, we also didn't have a planner until April. And that had to come, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
this
I mean,
was
there are
when we were deciding this, like there, I mean, you know, not to make excuses, but there were some extenuating circumstances that probably put them off waiting for the new, you know, George to come on and all of that. So it could be that delayed it some.
Okay.
So, but I think your point is very valid, Julie and Joe. It's like, we were here a year ago. We said at the time, we didn't think that they needed that time, and now they're asking for, yeah.
Yeah, I think last time we did put some wording in there that it was or sooner.
There was something, you're right. Okay.
How negative is the impact though? If it's extended over 6 months?
I think it's less than if we didn't do it. I think that, I don't,
To me, the impact is more about the longer it takes for us to establish the regulations, the longer it'll take for businesses to be allowed to establish in town, and we could lose that opportunity to neighboring towns to bring the business in. That is my only reason why it would be hard to do it. But you're right, there's a bigger impact on the attorneys if we.
and the town staff and the town, like, oh my goodness, and then, yeah, so.
If our goal is to get them to think this through more, it takes them time to think about it in a different way, then we don't give them the time to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, would the zoning commission have the ability to lift the moratorium?
Yes, so when regulations are done, it probably will be that final text includes removing the moratorium and
Right, so,
put in what stands.
you know,
And I believe that's in,
We could put something like that in, we'll extend it, but if the regulations
yeah,
are,
she's already
Oh.
got it up there, removed as soon as zoning regulations are adopted to assistance.
there you go.
And that's,
Yes.
very similar to what we said last.
It
And if I remember right, it was a positive referral the first time.
It was.
For the moratorium
With that,
with, yeah,
it's I agree, we gave them a positive referral with that caveat, so,
just to add, the current text amendment for the previous one with all of the area bulk use, it has removing the moratorium. So if that were to be approved, the moratorium would be lifted. So it will happen when regulations are adopted.
somebody want to make a motion?
We need would recommend. Recommends.
Sorry about that.
This is action.
There you go. That's right, action verbs.
Action verbs.
So anybody want to,
So just so I'm clear, we're giving them a positive recommendation. If they need 6 more months, they can extend the moratorium.
well, what we're saying is we're going to give
But
them,
lift it as soon as you
we're
can.
going to give them a positive referral to extend the moratorium with the caveat that we're recommending that the moratorium be removed as soon as they get their regulations. So we're giving them a positive referral. We're hoping it's going to be less than 6 months.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to accept the referral.
Any seconds?
just like to amend the motion
Go
to
ahead.
refer to application 22-33 and the displayed draft motion. Sorry.
No, that's.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of reading the whole thing.
Right now, I understand, that's right. All right, any discussion or further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the referral for application 22-33? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
We're
I'm done.
we're good.
Oh, we've got correspondence. Woo-hoo.
We do not have any.
Okay. She looks so excited. We have correspondence.
Yeah. I just always feel a little bit of a golden retriever.
Oh, all right, so, anything else? All right, so without objection, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody. This was good discussion.